Hello, everyone, and welcome to another reflection on the first mark of mission, to tell. A verse from 1 Peter chapter 3. But in your hearts set apart Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have, but do this with gentleness and respect. So we're encouraged to set apart Christ as Lord, to be prepared to give the reason for the hope that we have, and to do so with gentleness and respect. We're not all called to be evangelists, but we are all called to be witnesses. There's been some research which indicates for a church to flourish, perhaps only 5 or 10% of the church membership are fully blown evangelists, but we're all witnesses, witnessing to the hope that we have. I love the story of John Sentamu, the previous Archbishop of York. He was holding one of his meetings when he arrived in York, and he was introducing himself to people in the diocese. And at the end of the evening, a boy at the back of the audience said to him, "Why do you believe in God?" And John Sentamu looked at the boy in the distance and invited the boy to come forward. He looked at the boy and realized that the boy's shoelaces were undone. So he knelt and tied up the shoelaces. And he said, "When I was a boy, someone told me about Jesus, that he could be my friend. So that night I knelt by my bed and asked him to be my friend. And do you know, he's been my friend ever since." I'm sure that boy remembered it for the rest of his life. Lots of people in the audience remembered it. It's a telling way to tell a story. What he did was he did something dramatic, which is memorable. He said something about Jesus, and he spoke from his heart about the way that he'd responded. So when we witness, what are we doing? What we're doing is we are pointing to Jesus. I'd strongly encourage you not just to point to the church, because the outsider, if I can use that word, might see that our membership of the church is just our particular club, our particular thing. But people are interested in Jesus, and people like to know about Jesus and the difference that he has made. And in some ways, people wonder what you should say. And the verse which I read said, "Be prepared." Well, how can we be prepared? To an extent, we are dealing with an individual situation when we have a conversation, but we can have a shape to what we may have to say. It may be, if you like, a before, what happened, and what happened next. I can think of many occasions in my life when I can think about the situation as I was before I had a particular encounter with Jesus. I can then describe how that encounter took place and the consequences of that. It's sometimes useful to have an illustration up our sleeve. I don't know how many of you know the bridge illustration, but I will try and demonstrate. There's a bank up there, and then there's a ditch across, up again, and a ditch going across the other side. And what this demonstrates is, on one side, we are there, the other side is God, and there is a gap between the two. And that gap is what the Bible calls sin, which separates us from God. And Jesus comes and stands in the middle of that gap. He's a cross, and that creates a bridge from our side and God's side. And what we are encouraged to do is to invite Jesus to help us to cross from one side to the other side. And the cross is his way of doing it. That is an illustration which many people have found helpful. And if you want to know more about it, you can go to the website of all sorts of organizations, but if you look up bridge illustration, you will be able to find it. The Navigator's website, and go to it. Some people have been finding the pandemic very alarming and frightening. Speaking for myself, I can say, and I'm not being arrogant, I hope, but I've had a certain calmness about it all. How can I have a calmness about it all? I can have a calmness about it all because I know deep in my heart that Jesus holds me in the palm of his hand. So if somebody was to ask me, why are you calm about it? I would say, well, I'm anxious for other people, but for myself, I know that Jesus has me in the palm of my hand. I don't think that's being arrogant. It's pointing to Jesus. The verse says we should do so with gentleness. We're not called to lecture anybody who we're talking to. We're told to convey the good news gently and with persuasion. And that's what we can all do. We can just leave a conversation and say, well, I can't intellectually convince you. I'm just going to leave it there. If you want to come back to me at some other stage, please do. Or you may be talking to somebody who is in a state of distress or anxiety, and you can say, well, I found that Jesus answers prayer. Would you like me to pray for you? And then continue that conversation again a few days or a few weeks later. People find that sort of thing helpful. So what I would encourage you all to do is to have some kind of framework that you can give if somebody asks you why you believe, and to remember it. You don't need to use it all the time, but you may find it helpful. If you're not sure what you believe or you'd like help in establishing a framework, why not approach somebody in the church for a discussion, perhaps join a group. There may be a group that would help. And when people talk about witnessing, don't be frightened. You're in a partnership with God. The Holy Spirit is with you. You're in a partnership with Jesus. In many ways, all you're doing is you're one beggar showing another beggar where to find bread. And if you see witnessing like that, you will, I hope, not be daunted. You know, Jesus longs for his church to grow. You and I can be partners with him in helping the church to grow. So, my friends, together, let's see the kingdom grow. Amen.